Fog number 34 is Bryan Niebling. Bryan was born in Murgon and moved to Brisbane in 1980 to play with Valleys in the Brisbane competition. Bryan made his origin debut in Game 1 of the 1983 series and went on to play 9 games for Queensland. In 1986, Bryan won the Rothmans Medal for the best and fairest player in the BRL. Bryan Niebling played 13 tests for Australia and was a member of the 1986 Unbeatables Kangaroo Tour, where he played all 5 test matches. Bryan was a member of the Brisbane Broncos inaugural side of 1988 and finished his rugby league career in the UK, playing for Hull Kingston Rovers.
Bryan Niebling, thanks so much for your time. What does it mean to you to be a Fog?
Oh, it's everything. I think it means it was a part of history, I guess. We changed the way people looked at league, and Queensland lost a lot of players to Sydney, and Queensland never won, I guess. And we got to put a group of people together who were mates and went on and won a lot of games and made Queensland proud, I think.
Take us back to growing up in Murgon. What was that like?
Well, it was hard. I was a farmer's son, so I missed out on a lot of stuff because of dairy cattle. I couldn't get the trainings, and so I didn't start playing footy till I was 12, and didn't play at school. I used to like playing cricket. So, but Murgon was a good town, and I always tell people that the guys who come from Murgon, older than me, 10 years older than me, who were my sort of role models in town. Like there was guys who played for Wide Bay, played for Queensland Country, and 2 guys went on to play for Queensland from my hometown. And one of them was a plumber, and he came up to the Murgon High School, and I would go up and see him every Monday morning and go, "Oh, how'd you go yesterday?" In the South Burnett comp. So just having those sort of people in the street, it wasn't a big town, it was pretty special. So, I think you hear kids now, they walk past, their idols, but I had them in my little district, so that was good.
So what was life on the farm like? What was a typical day for you? You said you couldn't play until, obviously, long hours and a lot of work. Well,
Mum and Dad had cows to milk, so it was only afternoons, and they start at 3 and they finish at 5:36. So, if I didn't get the bus home, I didn't get home. But I had my jobs. I think being on the farm was good because I was given jobs to do as a kid. We left the farm when I was 14. So, but all up till then, I had my jobs to do, and they were sweeping out the dairy, they were feeding the calves, they were and so you had this thing you were given to do, and if you didn't do them, well, Dad, he'd give you a backhander, so it was pretty hard, but we all had to do our little bit.
And do you reckon that helped you in your footy career or in career or life in general? The fact that
and I had respect from my parents. I think what they said. They weren't hard parents, but if I got a belt around the back of the legs, it was because I deserved it. But I think it did. It give you, you had to be there, and if you weren't there to lock the chooks in of an afternoon, well, the chooks were left out, and there was a fox come through, and you had no chooks left. So that sort of stuff, fell back on me. So I guess it did help later in life later on.
Yeah, no shortcuts.
No.
So when did you start playing, and how did that come about?
People from in town pestering my parents to let me play. So my sister had moved out, and she'd moved into town, so she had a car, so I was able.
So when you say moved into town, sorry, how far out of town did you live?
We were probably 5 k's out of town, but
which is a fair hike.
Yeah, well, I couldn't walk it because it was on a main road, and it was. Yeah. And in winter time, you train straight after school normally, but it was just getting picked up and getting home again. So it was. But my sister had a car license, so she was hooked in a couple of days a week to bring me home. I like footy was great. We played at lunchtime. So at schools you played, and you're tackling guys who were 2 years older than you. So. I reckon that helped me in my career as well. Playing against guys who were, I was in grade 4 and they were in grade 6 or 7, and you go and tackle them. I guess that's where I learned to tackle. So, yeah.
Well, when then did it start getting serious for you outside of, just playing with your mates, I suppose, and as you advanced through the ages and got on with your career, when did you start thinking of maybe further afield, or did someone tap you on the shoulder and say, Bryan Niebling, we think you might have a future?
Well, it was never in my wildest dreams. Like, I wanted to play footy with my mates, so whatever happened after that. In the juniors, I made the South Burnett rep side, and we played like in the Wide Bay comp. I had offers to come down to Brisbane in 1979, and I refused them, and I wanted to stay in Murgon and play a year of A grade. And we ended up going through with a bunch of kids from under 18, a couple of older players from Murgon, and a Jim Bull, who was a publican son-in-law, who was about 35, but he got us all as a group together, and we all bonded. And I never had any ambitions to come to even leave Murgon until I got a phone call from Wayne one day that South were coming out to have a look at me. And I went, oh, what's this? I'd go up to the pub, and it was just me, nobody else, and talking to Wayne, and he said, "Oh, you coming down to South?" And I thought I said yes, and then Valleys came out after that, and Tommy Duggan, who was a player from Wondai who played at Valleys in the late 70s, he said, "You can't go to South." So they invited me down for the BRL Grand Final in 1979, where Valleys played Souths, and Valleys won 26-0. And Tommy said to me, "You're not going to South." So that was I signed for Valleys and bought at Tommy's mother-in-law's place for 12 months, and so I never left home. I couldn't cook a meal.
That was going to be my next question. Yeah, this is a big move, isn't it?
Yes.
How was it?
Well, I did it, I'll come back from the meeting at the pub, and Dad said, "Well, what are you doing?" I said, "I'm going to Brisbane." So, and then we had to find somewhere to stay. So Tom said, "Well, his wife's mum was by herself and lived at Chermside, and she was interested in taking me in as a boarder." So I moved in, and she was like my second mum. She was great, fantastic. So I never really missed my mum, because she was my next mum. So
pivotal moment, that really, isn't it?
Well, I think if you come down as a 19-year-old to a city and you can't cook, and you get into a flat with a bunch of guys and you eat takeaways. So I had, well, I didn't have 3 meals a day, but I had, decent meals of a night time, and she made me lunch to go to work. So, I mean, I was living the dream, really.
And you're playing at Valleys. What was that step up like, coming from Murgon to play in the BRL?
We just trained harder. I think I was telling somebody a few days ago, like, when I went back to Murgon the first time after being down here for a month or so, the boys all go, "Oh, what's it like down there?" I said, "Well, they train harder and they drink more." And that was it. We used to train 3 nights a week instead of 2. We'd go to the pub and you'd have a drink, and that was the difference. Footy was still the same. I probably found it easier to play in Brisbane because the players around me were better players, and not putting the Murgon people down, but you didn't have to worry about the person alongside of you. They all knew what they were doing, so you're only worried about you. And I thought it was, well, I didn't think it was that hard. I thought it was going to be harder, to be honest.
So 1980 was a pivotal year in the history of rugby league, because Origin was starting. You'd played some representative football. You'd played interstate, etc. When did you start getting a consideration that you might actually get to play Origin? You made your debut in 83, but when did it start getting into your head that I could play that?
Well, after calling through a hole in the fence and watching the first game at Lang Park, I wanted to play it. That was what you just saw. It was so great. But I think, coming down to Valleys, I made a Brisbane side, the first Brisbane side picked in that 1980 year. So as a kid, like a 19-year-old, 20-year-old coming down, and I got picked in the Brisbane side. That was, so somebody thought I had something to offer, and I guess through a lot of hard work and, I don't think I ever set goals that you wanted to go and do what wasn't to make the Queensland side. It wasn't to do that. It just I wanted to play well for Valleys, and whatever happened there got you to where you were going. So I don't think you always wanted to be up the next level, but I thought there was better players than me. But I guess I was pretty consistent in what I did. I wasn't the flashiest player, but I would give the same each week. And I think there was a lot of players who played, would play great for their club. When they get into a rep side, they didn't do anything. So I could give what I did in the club scene as same as rep scene. So that was what I backed myself on, I guess.
What was it like in '81 to play alongside Arthur Beetson for Queensland?
Oh, it's like running. If he said run through a brick wall, you'd just go, how hard? That was. I remember one in the game, we were struggling and coming out from our own trial line, and Arthur said, "Come on, somebody's got to do something." You just went, "I'll do it," and you ruck the next ball up. That was what it was like. You do anything for him. And I mean, it was. I used to love his coaching. We go down to Valleys and have a training run, and he'd go, "Rightio, today's pretty serious. We're going to do a couple of laps and work on stuff." And he'd go, "Well, how about having a game of touch first, Arthur?" So the goal was, if you're playing against Arthur, you let Arthur sell a dummy and he'd run and score a try. So you'd play touch for an hour then, because he thought it was great fun. So, but it was just all. It was all fun until it come game day, and then it got serious.
1983 was the year that you made your debut for Queensland. Do you remember? Surely you do. Getting that phone call, notification, or whatever it may be, that you were to become Queensland's next Origin player?
Yeah, I think I got a phone call it was from Valleys. I think somebody must have rang Valleys, because we never had mobile phones in those days.
No. You would have been at work or something potentially.
Yes, of course. Yeah, worked 5 days a week. There's no easy goes then. But once you get named, you just. I think you get it becomes a blur. Everything's going through your head, and you get goose pimples, and then you got to pack your bag and go in the club into the motel the next day and train. So.
And you remember arriving in camp?
Yeah. Remember going into the gazebo terrace and walking in, and I knew most of the guys. There was a lot from Brisbane, and then Bowie and those guys, but. It was a Queensland side, so everybody just fitted in.
What was your first reaction to being told? Was it one of nervous anticipation? A lot of players sitting in that seat talk about not wanting to let Queensland down. What was your immediate reaction?
Oh, I know. I was excited. I think because Mum and Dad were in Murgon, I went and rang them straight away. So and this was I think it was the next day. So when I found out, no, it wasn't. It was at the motel. So I rang them and said I've made it. And I think it's a blur. You just you start thinking how good is this, and then you think, well, I've got to actually do something. So, it's you don't want to let anybody down, and I think that's the Queensland philosophy from back ever. Don't let anybody down. And Arthur used to have a call, Queenslander. I think Billy Moore always claims it, but that was our online defensive call from when I first started, Queenslander, and you don't let anybody, everybody just aimed up. So. That was what it was like. So,
what are the memories of the game? You're one of those to have made you debut at Lang Park as well. Did that make it even more special?
Oh, it was great. Yeah, you run out and you look where your wife is and family are, and and next thing it's over. If people ask you what happened without watching tapes, I probably wouldn't know. Everybody tells you it's fast, and it was club footy was good, and Brisbane footy next, and then you go to Origin, it was faster, and it just become a blur. Like, so, yeah.
Did you feel, though, that you belonged? Did you realise that you were, not that that you were worthy of being there, and that when did you feel comfortable about being an Origin player?
Oh, I think when you first go in there, because
You've been selected.
Wally, Jean, like Greg Dowling, Colin Scott, Chris Close, we all knew we all knew each other. So it wasn't I was going into a different world. It was going into a team that quite a few of us played for the same club. So, and we had played for Brisbane before, so you had that bonding. So, yeah, it wasn't a strange thing. It was just like, I mean, and back in those days, it was made fun. Like, it wasn't as regimented as it is now. It was team bonding for the first few days, and then you'd get, by the weekend you'd start getting a bit serious. So,
did you realise at the time how good the players were that you were playing with? And you mentioned some of those, and a couple of them have gone on to be immortals. Were you aware at that time, or you look back now and say, gee whiz, look at those, what I was a part of?
I look at Mal, and in a Queensland under-18 side, we played at Lang Park, and Mal was a centre, and he looked like he was running slow, but nobody could catch him. And like you go, oh my God, and then he was at South, and so we played against each other, and it was hard to tackle then. But yeah, I played with Wally, and saw what he could do at Clubland. He just had a vision. He could see ahead of things, and I used to hang around him, but he would say, go and do this, horse, and and then he'd score a try after it. But he would set it up, So yeah, I think I was pretty lucky.
Well, you throw in the fact that you then went on to represent Australia in 13 Test matches, a part of the unbeatables of 1986. So not only did you play on the Queensland side of the ledger with some immortals and the greats of the game, you also then teamed up with some of the greats, full stop, from the wore blue jumpers against you in Origin. What was it like being part of that 1986 Kangaroo tour?
Oh, this is great. They were, people build it up that you hate them, but they, like, we had Roy Simmons up here a few months ago having breakfast because he wanted to be with the Queensland players because he didn't like the Blues ones. But it was a great tour. Like, we had 26 guys, for 3 months, and I don't think anybody didn't get on with anybody else. It was just so. And I guess because we won, there was a little bit of pressure from the previous, the 82 tour that went over and went through as the Invincibles, and I think, we called ourselves the return of the Invincibles, and there was a couple of close games for the midweek guys, but we sort of it was a great tour. Like, Donnie Ferner was their coach, and we trained twice a day, every day, which it wouldn't be heard of now. And it wasn't hard training, but we do ball work, we play touch, just because it was. If you didn't do that, you were in your motel. It was boring. So you had, for 3 months you had you were training twice a day. So everybody just got on. Yeah, it was tremendous.
I know they're bringing you back in a certain way this year, the Kangaroo tours, but not to the length that you were talking about in those midweek matches. And do you reckon some of the current players are missing out, not being able to have a tour like that, or was it too long and you understand?
Oh, it wasn't too long, but for me, I had a 10-month-old son, and I come home and he was walking, and went with my wife at the airport, and she put him down. I'm going, Di. I went to grab him, and he walked to me. And he didn't know me, so I didn't know my son. My wife sent photos over. There was no videos. There was nothing else. You booked a phone call one or 2 days a week to ring up to be home, or for me to be in my room. So,
no face chat, no FaceTime.
No, nothing like that. So if you sent a postcard, it got there 3 weeks later. So that was not worth doing. So yeah, it was. Oh, that part was hard. For me, I was a married man and had a child. So that was you miss that. But as I said to my son, I would do it again, and because he always goes, oh, where were you for my first birthday, Dad? And I go, well, son, I would do it again. Don't. And I think he appreciates that too, because it was something that you pinch yourself about to be able to go and do it. And maybe it was a little bit too long. I think the last few weeks in France, we had 3 weeks in France after 6 weeks in England, and it was nice going to France, but maybe one or 2 games instead of 5 games in France would have been a good thing to come home a little bit quicker. And
as the career continued, you were around at the right time to be a member of the inaugural Broncos setup. What was that like? And being able to say that, yep, Origin Test match, and now playing for the biggest club in the NRL.
Yeah, well, it was. They had to build a team, but they had to find a team, I guess. And we had a nucleus of great players around Brisbane. The guys from Brothers went to St George, and played down there. So it was and I think bringing in Chris Johns and a few players from Sydney who had been down there helped a little bit. It was a great thing. I think it needed to happen. The clubs were struggling and they probably weren't run right, whereas the Broncos had a bit of money behind them. So, but I think just the Broncos was hard because of their commitment to, if we were playing a away game, sometimes we flew to Sydney on a Sunday morning. Get up at 6, go to the airport. They'd give you a little box of sandwiches. So one day we played North Sydney, where we went down. The reserve grade went straight to the field. We sat underneath the Harbour Bridge on the northern side for an hour, lying there, and then went to the ground. And that's not a build up to a game. So, if you're at Newcastle, well, you flew down, the night before, but it was still.
Well, you were there. Part of the game was changing from working 5 days a week to then becoming semi-professional and heading really towards that full-time professional era, weren't you?
Well, I still work 5 days a week. I was a carpet layer, so I worked 5 days a week, and footy was on Sunday. We didn't play any other days, so it wasn't. Well, I guess we got paid a little bit more than what the clubland in Brisbane were paying, but it wasn't much. But it was a challenge. I guess I had an offer from Penrith at one stage and Manly, and I just didn't want to go to Sydney. That was you can do what you do from Brisbane.
And Murgon to Brisbane's a big jump. Brisbane to Sydney is most probably bigger, isn't it?
Yeah, I think so. So, I was happy to stay here. I'd achieved what I had achieved, so I didn't really have to achieve anything else.
Who had the biggest influence on your career?
A guy from Murgon, Trevor Otto. He was my junior coach. Just coached us for a couple of years in our under 18s. We won a couple of finals, and he was just he played for Murgon. He was a halfback. He was he's 5 foot tall, but he just loved his footy, and we had all these kids around, and so I still think he taught me the love of football, to enjoy what you're doing. It wasn't yelling at you; it was just teaching you how to play footy. So Trevor Otto was probably the guy who I always go back to Murgon and say thanks.
I know a lot of players in your position don't necessarily reflect too often on their career or don't want to talk too much about it, but how do you, or how would that young bloke at Murgon locking up the chooks and cleaning out the barns, etc., think if he knew that he was going to represent Queensland more than 10 times, play for the Broncos, play 13 tests, finish his career in England, etc.? How do you reckon that young kid from Murgon would feel?
Oh, I think he'd feel pretty proud. I get a bit teary. You start thinking about where you come from, and I play for for the love of the game, and what I got out of it was great. I sort of, but the kid from Murgon, he, I always did things the right way, and I always trained hard and did whatever I did. So I guess if you do things the right way, well, there's a chance of you succeeding. So that's about where I am.
Well, Fog number 34, Bryan Niebling, congratulations on a wonderful career, and thanks so much for your time.
Thank you.
Thanks for watching this episode of the Fog's Queenslander podcast. If there's a Fog you want to hear from, leave a comment to let us know. And don't forget to like and subscribe so you don't miss any of our videos.